Hey, I want to welcome everybody today for coming and attending Tax Hacks for retirement income. We're going to give about another minute and we're going to go ahead and get started here. So everyone, if they can, just be a little bit patient and then we're going to get started here very shortly. Well, let's go ahead and get started here. This is Val Mike, so I'm going to be your host today with the Mike Soul Group. And hopefully today you're going to walk away with some really good information. Hopefully you're going to be motivated to create some tax-free retirement income for yourself. So, be patient here as we go through this. I try to make these things interesting. I try to bring in interesting information that maybe you never heard before. And I do this to go ahead and to set some perspective on our little session here. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to turn off my camera and let's get going here. All right, we at the Maxo Group, we're firmly committed to this one idea, and that knowledge is power. We seek to empower all of our customers so that you can see and make your own informed decisions and create your own good life. Now, we exist solely to serve you, the family, and the community here. First question here, taxable or non-taxable income for retirement? Now, over my 42 years of being in financial services, I've asked this question hundreds, if not thousands of times. And almost without exception, the answer is they all wanted non-taxable income. Now, does this surprise you? Probably not. Isn't it our instinct that we need to keep as much of our money as we can for retirement? Then why are we doing the exact opposite most of the time that can help us to achieve that? Now, over the next few slides, I'm going to show you what happened and what you must do about it to avoid what and take advantage of these hacks I'm going to be covering here. Now, I've seen and advised enough people in my lifetime to fill the Gonzaga basketball arena. That's about 6,000 people. Although in many ways, us Americans are the same, and we can use many of these same financial tools, we're all still different from each other, kind of like that pigeon. Not all financial tools work alike for everyone. But when the right tool can be applied to the right situation, the impact it could have on your money to keep you, that you can get to keep, can be life-changing. It just be life-changing. Now, to keep this simple, we're going to break this down into the accumulation, we got planning and preservation, and then we got distribution. This is where it starts. All right. All that you're going from this point forward will dictate what kind of lifestyle you will have to live when you get ready to retire. It's all about how much you set aside, how much you think you can make on it, and how much of it you think you'll keep. Now, in a large part, the tax strategies determine how much you keep. Now, the more serious you are about this, the more likely you will build assets and more income into your later years. And if this is you, this webinar is perfect for you. An early committed start to this lifelong habit will bear fruits in the future that only the disciplined will enjoy. It's easier than you may think. Some of you here right now are a little further down the road. Some of you have really hammered down on your 401k. Some of you are hitting the max contribution of $20,500 a year. Some of you are trying to catch up, and I get it. You're concerned because you look back over the last 20 years and it's like a blur now, and then you're thinking, well, 20 more years down the road is going to be on top of us real quick. Then what? What we really have, and it will be, what will we really have, and will it be enough? Now, you're supposed to be in the most productive years of your life right now, and now's the time to focus on those tools that can revolutionize your finances for retirement. Now, tax-free retirement can be a game changer for what kind of lifestyle that you will get to enjoy when work isn't so important. Now, on to my next step here. You people who busted butt for the 40 to 60 years are heading home. This is the distribution. What now? What do you do? Are there some hacks in the bag too? How are you taking your income out is huge for you, and you need to get it right for the first, get it right and get it right the first time. Now, there's some extra hacks that I will be covering towards the end of this presentation that might apply to high net worth folks with, that are holding, let's say, ESOPs or employee stock options. Stick around for sure. But everyone is different. You remember that pigeon? Now, here's what's going on. People say they want tax-free income. At least that's what the majority does. But what they're not doing, all right, so what they're not doing is what they need to be doing today to create that. And what they're doing is the exact opposite of what they're supposed to be doing. Now, does that make sense? To do the opposite to try to get what you want. Now, there's a huge a disconnect here. Now, okay, I'm going to show you how to correct that. It won't work for everyone, but it will work for most. And after today, I hope to show you how to create a blueprint and put a plan in action that will help you achieve tax-free income. And I believe that's what you all came here for, right? Was tax-free income, right? So here's the question. Do you want tax-free income for retirement? And if so, stick around for the rest of this. If not, well, it's up to you if you want to stick around for the rest of this webinar here. Who knows? You might just discover something new. Unless commitment is made, there are only promises and hopes, but no plans. If you don't aim at having tax-free retirement, you're almost guaranteed that you're going to miss it. You're assuring your success there. We're covering here the 6 easy tax hacks that nearly everyone could and should be doing. It really isn't that hard, but once you know how to do it and how it works, you're going to do it. Now, what does the law say about taxable and non-taxable retirement income? No, really, what does it say? Well, don't worry. I'm going to tell you what it says anyway, and where you can go and verify this yourself. And one more thing, a little bit of house cleaning. We don't do taxes. We don't get tax advice. We're not tax planning or preparation firm. The Moxel Group is not giving you tax advice. If you need that help, we suggest that you go to your tax person. Now, I love history. It tells us where we've been. It also helps us build a vision going forward. People who ignore history are likely to fall victim into the future because they didn't learn the lessons of the past. Don't be that person. This is a chart that shows our income tax, tax history all back to the beginning of in 1913. And you see all those peaks and valleys? That's your Congress and your presidents monkeying around with the taxes. Also, in 1944, the highest individual rate went up to 94%. And that's pretty crazy, isn't it? 94%. And here's what I want you to take away from this. They did this in the past. And there are a few reasons to believe that they won't do this again. Do you really trust them? Really, do you? When it comes to taxes and spending money, the two major parties are both at fault. When push comes to shove, the loser is normally the taxpayer, right? Always. We taxpayers pick up the bill. But you don't have to be the loser when it comes to tax-free retirement, and neither party has much say over it. In 1969, for example, Richard Nixon spearheaded the Tax Reform Act of 1969. This tax law notably created the alternative minimum tax. Now, this change was intended to tax high-income earners who had previously avoided incurring tax liability due to various exemptions and deductions. Here's the real number, important number I want you to remember here. By the end of Nixon's 4 years, our national debt increased to $335 billion. Now, next we have Jimmy Carter. He tried to pass some meaningful tax legislation, and he promptly lost. And he became a one-time president. He did, however, manage to increase the national debt by nearly 43% to almost $1 trillion, $998 billion. Next came President Ronald Reagan and his Tax Reform Act of 1986 that brought changes to certain financial assets and accumulation vehicles, which we're going to, become the focus of the workshop today. He notably reduced the personal tax rate from 50% down to 28%. And he also, by the way, at the end of his term, he had 2 terms, he had a national debt of nearly $2.9 trillion. Next, we have President George H.W. Bush. He reneged on this promise. He did. He increased taxes. He said he wouldn't, and probably became a one-term president. But he did wind up with $4.4 trillion in debt. Now, you remember that Nixon's $335 billion of debt? You remember that? Next, we have President Bill Clinton, the Tax Reform Act of 1993. It created 2 new personal income tax rates of 36 and 39.6%. It also, he made up an 85% taxation on Social Security. Now, we'll be tackling that here in a couple minutes. This may be a very important piece of information for your future. Now, at the end of his term, his national debt was $5.8 trillion. Can you see all that sign in the back there? He wants to be debt-free. You all say it. Next is President George Bush with his Tax Relief Act of 2001 and 3. The tax law created a new 10% tax bracket, so on the lower end. And you notice that debt-free banner in the front there? Nah, that didn't happen either. He left office with a 105% increase to nearly $12 trillion in debt. Now, goodness. Then we move on to President Barack Obama and his Economic Growth and Tax Relief Act, Reconciliation Act of, I think that was what, 2007, I think it was. And he left office with nearly a 70% increase in international debt to nearly $20 trillion, over $20 trillion, as a matter of fact. And then recently we had President Donald Trump. Now, he signed into law the Tax Cuts Job Act of 2017. He significantly increased the standard deduction for, it was what, $24,000 for married couples and $12,000 for single filers. After one term, and that by the way, that has a significant impact on a lot of what we're going to discuss here. And then after that one term, he left office with nearly $7 trillion increase, a $7 trillion increase in our national debt, ballooning it to over $27 trillion. Remember Nixon? 335 billion, remember that? And then we got President Joe Biden. Now, it's a Democrat-controlled Congress, and they've yet to present any kind of a tax package yet. But from what I'm gathering, it may not be good news for the 401k IRA users. Hopefully, we'll see it all soon. Today, it's a wait and see, see what's coming forward here. It's anyone's guess at this point, but we'll probably see a significant increase in our national debt. I'm seeing numbers of around 31, almost $32 trillion right now with them. So what have we learned over these past 5 decades? Well, you can't control politicians, okay? You can't. Nearly all of them want to change tax policies. And you can't predict on how your future income is going to get taxed. You can't do it. You simply have no idea what tax environment that you will be in when you start taking your money out to live on. Now, I kind of laugh when I look at this picture here. I still do. But it should help motivate you to pay close attention to tax hack number 2. Rely on what you learn. Do your own homework. Be that force in your planning. It's It's hard-earned money that we're talking about here, money that you worked hard for. And are you going to trust that guy with that? Are you? Or any of them? Take control over your future before your retirement years. There's no do-overs. There's no mulligans like you have in golf where you can take another swing at it. You have to get it right the first time. Now, here's the next target. Tax hack number 3. How do you avoid an uncertain impact on your future retirement dollars? And this is what I'm talking about: the 401ks, the IRAs, the 403, all the tax deferred savings plans. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about defined benefit plans and how it all got started and what it means to you both now and in the future here. Now, to that, let's start here. The years of our Great Depression of the 1920s and 30s. Now, it's in those difficult years, fewer than 5%. Now, think about this: 5% of the workforce had any kind of a pension or retirement. And most of them had their savings wiped out during that period of time. 25% of our workforce was out of work, could barely provide for their families. Our country was coming out of a very desperate time, and the future looked bleak for most Americans. It was a really bad time, folks. It was. Now, as a small boy growing up in a farm town in Indiana in the 50s and 60s, I lived about a quarter of a mile from the railroad track and a train depot down there. And I vividly remember hobos getting off the train and making their way back the alley, up our alley, up to our home. And they would knock on our back door asking for something to eat. And my parents were always kind and helped them. We never worried about them. I remember the amazing stories that they shared of their travels across the country. And it wasn't until years later that I finally understood who they were and where they came from and what they went through. These are the men of the Great Depression. Even 30 years after the Great Depression, they never got off the tracks. They could never put their lives back together again. It was both fascinating and very sad time for them indeed. I've often talked about those experiences with many people, especially my family, and I've often wondered whatever became of them. In an attempt to solve this problem, FDR and Congress created a new revolutionary approach to help Americans have a minimum safety net of income where they could retire, and that was called FDR's Social Security Act of 1935. Everyone was required to contribute 2% of their gross income up to a maximum of $3,000 of taxable income. Now, those tax dollars, those tax dollars were put into their account inside the Social Security Trust Fund, and the return on those dollars were tied into U.S. government securities. Now, from the start, it was meant to give Americans a basic amount of subsistence money for their future retirement. And today, Social Security has morphed and ballooned to where you're required to pay 6.2% of your income. And for many Americans, it has become the cornerstone of their retirement, their future. And it's very important to note that your employer is required by law to match those contributions, bringing the total to 12.4%. Now, World War II changed everything. After fighting in an ugly war, our soldiers, sailors, Marines came home, needed jobs, and employers had to compete for them. We were in the peacetime, and the greatest generation, was coming back from a war and was getting back to work in an era that started a time of unprecedented prosperity. American companies recognized that in order to attract this talent and the labor force to grow and create stability, they needed to offer a compensation package beyond just paying them a wage. Americans were looking for security and then for their retirement years, and our nation, it responded. To attract and to retain that talent and the labor force, many companies started offering pensions. Now, good pay and a promise for a secure future became standard. It became the standard, folks, in which employees pursued for many years of commitment that they could invest. it was a good arrangement for the most part. Most of you, you don't have pensions, but let's understand what they are anyway. Pensions are a promise. Okay? They're a promise from a company or a government agency to pay you a guaranteed lifetime income after you retire. And the companies are responsible for making sure you get that payment. The calculated pensions based upon the years that you worked for them and also your wages at the time that you're approaching retirement. The big changes on employee relationships and pensions were coming. In 1974, and that's during the Nixon years, Congress passed sweeping legislation that affected both employers and employees. Higher standards and minimum requirements for employers had to be met to keep pensions in place. Ultimately, this and other legislative actions set into motion what was to become a massive movement out of pensions for employers and employees into 401k type plans. This is the date where, at least I think so, this is the date where everything changed. Although it wasn't overnight, the gears were set into motion that changed the entire landscape of the retirement planning arena. In 1978, Congress passed the Revenue Act, which gave birth to the 401k and IRAs and similar type plans. At the beginning, these tax-deferred savings plans were originally set up to benefit highly compensated individuals, which allowed them to defer money away from their taxable income. Remember that chart? I was showing you the tax chart and high income taxes back then. It's important to understand that during that period of time, the top federal income tax rate was approaching nearly 70%. There was for sure some strong motivation on their part and a lot of lobbying in DC. Could we return to similar tax tables in the future? No one knows, but I never rule it out based on history that I have seen. Goodbye, security. Hello, insecurity. Now, corporate America quickly realized that sponsoring a 401k plan removed the risk and expense they incurred over traditional pension plans. It didn't take long for the employers to start dropping or freezing their defined benefit pension plans. I personally believe that they knew exactly what they were doing when they petitioned Congress for legislation that resulted in the promotion of 401k plans. In 1985, there were well over 112,000 single employer defined benefit pension plans, not to mention federal, state, and local municipalities. Nearly 20 years later, this is by 2013, the number of private pensions shrank to below 23,000. That was a massive drop. Now, that means that only 11% of the workforce had pensions. The rest of the average workers were left to figuring out how the market works and how to grow their nest eggs. The data shows that, that shows us that most haven't done well, and they're all in trouble for retirement plans. I'm assuming most, if not all of you here, understand that putting away money into a 401k type plan is essentially nothing more than tax-deferred method to delaying federal income taxes. Some states, now listen to this, some states also will tax your income from these types of plans as well. When you participate in a 401k, IRA, or 403 plan, all you're really doing is kicking the tax can down the road to pay the taxes at a later date. Do you really benefit from this? Do you? Consider this. For those of you who don't pay state income taxes at all, if you were to move to another state that has a state income tax, those dollars can get taxed. Okay? You're just kicking the can down the road. Whoa, what? You mean if I move to a state with a state income tax that I may have to pay taxes on my money coming out of my 401k plan? Yes, the answer is yes, okay? If you're considering retiring outside the state of Washington or other states, income taxes could impact your income. But there's a solution. There is. It's called tax-free income. When you are ready to take those dollars out for retirement, What's going to be the tax impact on your retirement? What will be your tax bracket? Do you know? Do you know? Is it going to be 20, 10, 30%? The answer is no one knows. That's the hard truth. No one knows. But what we do know is that whatever dollars that you created through our recommendations in creating a tax-free income tax strategy, it won't be affected. So it doesn't matter. How important would it be for you to know that and to be able to take advantage of that? We do know this as well. Politicians will try to press buttons and pull levers to create more income revenue from the federal for the federal government, and that can happen. And if that happens, if you're in one of those 401k plans, that can affect you. Our tax hacks here could stop them dead in their track. Now remember, Uncle Sam has an insatiable appetite. He does. No one seems to have the courage to put the brakes on his spending and the need for those tax dollars. This can and will affect tax policies in the future, which could ultimately impact your retirement. The national debt matters. It does. Now let's jump into Social Security here. Is Social Security going to play a big part in your retirement? Unfortunately, for the majority of the Americans, the answer is yes. But what about you? For most Americans, it will be the cornerstone for the retirement. For others, it still may be important, but you plan for other retirement assets. But those assets can have a substantial impact on how much of your Social Security income that you can keep. If you remember, I shared with you earlier that under President Bill Clinton in his Tax Reform Act of 1983, I said that up to 85% of your Social Security benefits could get taxed. All of this occurs under what's called the provisional income formula. So what is the provisional income formula? Well, simply this. This is what you need to know. 50% of your Social Security is thrown into that bucket. Next is ordinary income. This includes distributions from your 401k, IRAs, and other type plans. Next are dividends and capital gains from instruments like stocks and bonds. And for some of you older folks, lastly, your earnings from your non-taxable municipal bonds. Yes, you heard me right. Your earnings off your municipal bonds go into the provisional income. So much for non-taxable, right? In the first, and this is, you got to pay attention to this. In the first publication, and this is in 1993, this tax table is what Americans use to calculate their tax liability on their Social Security payment. If you were married, filed jointly, and you had an income below $32,000, you would have no tax liability, none. If your income was between $32,000 and $44,000 through that income formula there, up to 50% of your Social Security could get taxed. And if you were over $44,000, up to 85% of your Social Security could get taxed. We're talking about thousands of dollars here, folks, that gets lost because of this. Now, here's another tidbit. In that same year, 1993, the national median income for an American was around $22,000. That was in 1993. In 2019, this is 26 years later, the median income for Americans jumped to a little over $52,000. What I'm going to show you here next is going to solidify in your mind how your government works in manipulating the numbers to get more money from you. There's no mistake about this. Keep in mind, most of you in your retirement years of your life are limited in your income options. Most will not be working, and work opportunities will be limited to you. Let's take a look at this. This is that same publication for the provisional income, except this is the most recent 2020 publication. This is stunning. Look at this. None of the brackets have been adjusted since the beginning in 1993. Now, do you see what's going on here? Your government, through inflation, is artificially inflating every American's income to collect more revenue. Now, how much longer will our government allow this to continue after 38 years of no adjustment whatsoever? Now, I can't say, but this is what I can say. Maybe you can do something about this today. Now, this is something, that very few people know about unless you're in retirement, okay? It's called the income-related monthly adjustment amount for Medicare Part B and D. And it's basically, they don't call it a tax, but it's a tax. It's a progressive tax that's directly related to your retirement income. Now, I want to show you something here that I'm near certain most of you have never seen this, never realized before. Even though they say that this is not an income tax, they call it income adjustment. It's really fancy lingo for the place a tax word. When you make distributions in your 401k and IRAs or sell real estate or have other capital gains, it affects your IRMAA. We're going to get into the next tax hack here, which is, move your contributions, right? Move your contributions. And you want to create non-taxable income. And when you can do that, you can avoid a lot of this. All right. Now let's get on to our next tax hack here. 78% of all retired Americans who own a home are still making a mortgage payment. They have mortgages. And so how's that a mortgage going to affect your retirement? Like I was saying, 78% of all retired Americans who own a home are still making mortgage payments. That's incredible. Now, that's a really significant number because it's not a good trend for our citizens who are moving into their retirement years where their income is significantly changing and becoming fixed and limited, right? And the impact it's having on their financial security, which can be costly. And in most cases, we believe it's unnecessary. We don't think people should be in debt. So what does this have to do with tax hacks for retirement? Well, it has a great deal to say about it, okay? You remember that President's Tax Cut Job Act of 2017. Many of you who were able to itemize your deductions off your 1040, remember that? Remember that day? All right, well, you can't anymore, right? Because why? Because he raised the standard deduction, this debt, but yet you're still carrying this debt. So this debt that you need to reconsider as to what you need to do about it. Even though you may have benefited from the new standard deduction, you're still paying thousands of dollars in interest on that debt that you should be eliminating that could be built for your retirement future. There are methods that you can use to be able to do just that and increase your retirement dollars significantly. Wouldn't that be great? If you could just take your mortgage payments and put it into your retirement payment, how cool would that be? Some of you can do it. I can show you how. Do you like that idea? Well, we can certainly find out. All you have to do is just, get with me and I'll show you. Tax hack number 4 is simply this. Stop wasting those interest payments on mortgages and look at getting debt free. And we just might be able to show you how to do it, okay? Stop wasting the money there. Next tax hack. Net unrealized appreciation. Now, some people here today may be in a position where they can take advantage of this. If you have substantially highly appreciated employee stock options or profit sharing plan inside your 401k plan, taking your distributions on those gains in a form of capital gains instead of ordinary income, it just might be the ticket for you. The benefit is that the cost basis is treated as ordinary income, whereas your net unrealized appreciation and post distributions can be taxed as long-term and short-term capital gains. To benefit to see if this benefits you, you need to analyze the potential impact of how those gains affect you and how they land on your 1040. So this is one of those ones you really kind of have to play with the numbers. You do have to have an accountant that knows how to do this stuff and figure that out. Again, remember, we're not an accounting firm, but we're certainly happy to bring you ideas though. And here's what might be coming our way. Talk out of DC, I talked about this a little bit, that there might be a 25% increase in long-term capital gains. So we also see $450,000 married income, $400,000 for single increases on the tax net unrealized gains. You singles are getting hammered on this. If this is true, if this is what's really coming out. You high-tech sector employees are especially affected. The tax on those stock purchases and other ESOPs are coming due. And it is time to consider mitigating the tax consequences of your future retirement dollars. But this is also speaking to you younger folks who are just now coming into that world. Forward-thinking planning is crucial. Forge your legacy with every available tool that gives you both leverage and tax mitigation. All right, so now here we are. This is the big one, okay? How do we create tax-free income? How can you put yourself in a position so that the money you set aside will be legally invisible to the IRS? You like that? One way is the Roth IRA. You can make contributions in this tax qualified plan after you pay the taxes. This is where you pay taxes first and then you make the money and put it in there. For many of you, your current marginal tax rate might make this a favorable choice. That's a lot of you folks out there, I think, that are probably in that category. The limit for contributions in 2020 is, $5,500. And if you're over 50, it's $6,500. And if you're participating in a company 401k that also offers Roth alternative, the contribution limits are the same as the 401k. And if you make between $196,000 and $206,000 on your annual adjusted gross income, this is on your 1040, there is a reduced eligible amount. No contributions can be made if it's above $206,000. You hear that, folks? You can't create a non-taxable Roth IRA because you're making too much money. That's the government rules on you. I'm going to show you how to get around it. Roughly 70% of all 401ks have a Roth as an option. Contribution limits in there are the same. They mirror the 401k, and the same they phase out of the Roth as well. All right, so you're going to be facing, if your 401k plan has that as an offer, you could do that. But again, you're going to be faced with those phase out rules. I'm going to show you how to get around it. Well, there's few exceptions. You can just about hold your money in any investment that you want. It could be stocks, bonds, mutual funds, money markets, exchange traded funds, ETFs, annuities. There's some of the more common choices. I know some people can do gold. And while there are a few exceptions, you can just about hold any investment in these retirement accounts. Anytime you're thinking about putting money into a Roth IRA and you're sending your kids to college, Roth IRA assets are not counted as an asset. You have to report on your FAFSA application. And that's for the aid loans, things like that. I know many of you have been through this. Some of you have been through it personally yourself. I have. I know I've been through it with my kids even. However, if you do make a distribution from a Roth at any time, your distribution can be counted against FAFSA eligibility. You got to be really careful about what you're doing there. If you're going to take money out of that Roth and you got kids in college, yeah, you may want to talk to your accountant about it. Next, we have life insurance. We believe that this is the best route. Contributions are treated the same as a Roth IRA. Your money grows tax-deferred just like a Roth IRA, and it too can provide a non-taxable income at retirement. Now, life insurance plans have other benefits that we're going to get here in just a minute that both the Roth and IRA cannot match. They can't even come close to it. So why is it tax-free like a Roth IRA? Well, this is coming to that tax code that I was talking about, 7702. To maximize your opportunity to accrue maximum or money non-taxable, you have to be paid in. You have to be covered under 7702. The Tax Reform Act of 1984 regulates life insurance. And if you want to go read up on this, I'm not going to get into a lot of details on this, but this is the rule. This is it right here. This is why you can do all these things I'm talking about with life insurance product. Boom, right there. In essence, under section 7702, you are allowed to use your dollar twice. Now, there's no other financial instrument that can do this. It allows you to leverage your income in a way you can't do any way else. We particularly are interested in index universal life. So what is what is index universal life? Well, basically, it's a way to save money. It allows your money to grow tax-deferred like a 401k or IRA. It grows when the market grows, but unlike the market, when the market goes down, your cash in your plan never does. You only get the gains. You're only going to make money in these kinds of plans. You're never going to lose any money. Now, over time, like other saving instruments, your money will continue to grow without the concern of losing it, and because that's never going to happen. When the time comes, instead of taking money out and paying taxes, Index Universal Life has a feature that allows you to take a loan even while your money is still growing. That's the key. And since it's considered a loan, it's non-taxable. So why would you take a loan? Well, your cash is never touched. It continues to grow. You have a margin between what you earn and what you pay on the loan. And then in this example, we're assuming that your cash is growing at 6% and the loan is 4%. That's a 2% spread. And because of this, you're extending the life of your policy, and also you're creating more retirement income. Now, you actually have to run some illustrations to see this, how this really works and compare it, but that's the basis of it here. So in essence, it allows you to apply smart leverage to create income that you can't do any other way. You can't do it with a 401k, you can't do it with a Roth, can't do it with other things. And then for those of you who are a little bit more affluent and have higher income and net worth, there's another opportunity for you. Instead of using only your money, you can use other people's money. Yeah, you can. You can use other people's money to put it in your plan and create your income with less money. And there's some rules that apply to that, and we can talk about that. All right, now, the good news about all this, folks, when you're using these kinds of plans here, when you're using specialized life insurance products, future tax changes unlikely to affect your plans. Current plans are always grandfathered in, always. And that in other words, if you start something now, and then let's say 5-10 years down the road, the rules change, well, what you started doesn't change. It gets rolled in, grandfathered. Excuse me. This gives you peace of mind knowing that you have a predicted outcome. It gives you, what it does here, it gives you the ability to create like a pension. I'm not saying you're creating a pension, but I'm saying you're getting the environment of like what you could do with a pension. Money contributed to these structured life insurance plans can participate in the market through the index account. Depending upon the company offering plan, you typically can choose from different strategies that you feel best suits you. These strategies include such things as the S&P, the Dow Jones, NASDAQ, Euro 500, Hang Seng, Gold, Emerging Markets, Russell Indexes. There's a bunch of them. You can choose which one you think you like the best. In addition to this, cash and income benefits that you enjoy, these types of plans pay you a cash benefit in the event that you become critically ill. All right. You know, like a life-threatening illness. I have one right now. A lady just had a kidney transplant. I just found out about it. And she has one of these things, and she didn't even know. Well, we're working on that now. I did tell her. If you become chronically ill, like you're in a nursing home or something like that, they'll take care of you. Again, Roth and I are simply not going to do these things. The benefit from day one of your plan starts while you're alive. You don't have to die. You can be alive, and you can have these kind of benefits paid for you. Again, 401ks and IRAs and things like that. Just simply don't do it. So let's break it down. Summing it up here. So we're comparing a Roth to a structured life insurance policy. We're not subject to structured policies, not subject to RMD rules like a Roth IRA. We don't have limited contributions, except as it's governed by 7702, which is a lot more than what you see in most cases with a Roth. They're both about the same on taking money out, tax-free distribution, provisional income formula. No, neither one of them show up in there. They affect applications on that fast, but yes, they do on a Roth. on a life? No. Completely tax-free at death? No, there can be taxation on a Roth IRA. Some of the other things here, Roth doesn't do life insurance, specialized policy does, only pays out what is in the Roth. That is true with the Roth, and but with the specialized policy, it's, again, they got the life insurance that pays out. Tax Act number 6, create non-taxable income, retirement income with a structured life insurance plan. So now what's next? I went by that pretty quick. So now what's next? Pretty simple. I'll take a few questions here. If anybody has some, you can just type it into the chat channel. And then I'll address it. You also see that in the chat box, I put at the beginning my calendar link, my email, my phone number, all is there. You want to get on the phone with me, talk with me on Zoom, however you want to do it. It all starts just by asking questions, doesn't it? That's where it starts. You have to ask, will this help me or not? I don't know. Depends upon what kind of pigeon you are. And I don't mean that lightly. I'm not saying that to be funny or anything, but everyone is different. Sometimes it works out just so good. In other ways, and then other times it's really, really good. And then sometimes I might not be able to help you at all. There might be some reasons behind it. But nevertheless, it all starts with that conversation. So let's see if we got any questions here.